The extract I will be talking about today is taken from the Bloody Chamber, and this is also in a larger collection of short stories known as the Bloody Chamber and Other Short Stories. And this is written by Angela Carter, which was published in 1979. Um, this extract appears in the Rising Action section of the short story, and and Angela Carter is often known as a postmodernist author who tackles her stories by examining the role of women in society. Um, Andrew Carter utilizes the narrative point of view, characterization, and illusion to depict the scene of the Marquis handing over the keys to the castle to the heroine in order to examine society's one-sided perception of women objectification. And
Sorry, I would normally do this because I'm normally much more prepared about all these transitions. Just read that commentary.
Andrew Carter utilizes narrative point of view, characterization, and illusion to depict the scene of the Marquis handing over the keys of the castle to the heroine in order to examine society's one-sided perspective on women objectification. Society's view of women objectification often involves a negative connotation in which women dislike and neglect their role of being objectified to a singular value, but this does not seem to be, and this does not seem to hold true in this story as a larger whole. By using the narrative's point of view, as it can be seen that in this extract, this is kind of like an internal monologue of the heroine reminiscing about her past, in which this gives a sense of truth and like a revealing of reality of the effect of women objectification on women. And this also gives the story a more dynamic appeal because we see the progression of emotions throughout the heroine's journey. Moving on, the Andrew Carter further uses characterization in order to expand on her argument. This can be seen in line 2. I felt as giddy as if I were on the edge of a precipice. The precipice is a ledge on a wall, and in the beginning of the story, we see the heroine before embarking on the journey to the Marquis' castle. She is scared. She is afraid of leaving her comfort of a home in order to go on to the environment of a marriage. But then it can be seen here, I felt as giddy. Giddy connotes a sense of possession, in which it can be seen that she is in fact not afraid anymore, and that she's being controlled. And I was afraid not so much of him, of his presence, heavy. The line, I was afraid not so much of him, of his monstrous presence, heavy as if he had been gifted at birth with more specific gravity than the rest of us. These lines from 2 to 4 is also a further evidence of Angela Carter's use of portraying the heroine as a dynamic character, where she juxtaposes her feelings with the heroine's feelings with a visual description of the Marquis, in which he is dehumanized to the point where he is described using gravity. And society's like common view of women is also further evidence in line 5 to 6. Always subtly oppressed me, and the word subtle is very important because we do not know whether this is implied or whether this is the truth. And the ultimate, or like the most revealing characterization is seen from lines 7 to 11, in which I hardly recognize myself from his descriptions of me, and yet might there not be a grain of beastly truth in them. And in the red firelight, I blushed again, unnoticed, to think he might have chosen me, because in my innocence he sensed a rare talent for corruption. Firstmost, we see society's value on women here. It's on innocence, in which the heroine previously possesses. But as we can see from the progression of the story, progression of events up to this point in the novel, we have seen that the heroine has transformed from a position where she neglects or accepts the Marquis's wedding proposal in order to propel herself into a higher social standing in a sense, and in which she has become she has been transformed almost to a point where she is becoming aroused by his attraction, not by his attraction, but by his possession of her, and the fact that he chose her simply because of her value. And this contributes to the argument of society's one-sided perspective of women, because in this case, we see the heroine, although she is subject to women objectification, she seemingly relishes in the thought of it, and that this is her, and that it's not, and it maybe not be something that women will actually not enjoy. Third most, Angela Carter uses allusion to the to the legend of Bluebeard, and in order to further her stance on society's one-sided perception of woman objectification. Bluebeard was a legend of a rich, ugly man that entrusts his keys to his wife, and the wife then discovers a room full of bodies of the pirate's previous wives, and Bluebeard returns uh, from home later to kill her, but her brothers come to rescue her. We see from lines 15 and 25 there is heavy use. There is a heavy connection of this of Angela Carter's work to the Legend of Bluebeard, where the Marquis entrusts his keys to the heroine. The fact that he is a rich, ugly man is also further evidenced before in the story, where in the train ride to the castle, the Marquis is described as a faceless and a man smoothed by his previous experiences. The Andrew Carter often deviates from from using deviates from the folktale in her stories in order to establish a point. And this point in case is that first she is to establish the empowerment of women by later in the story where the heroine is saved by her mother, which contrasts the archetype of a Prince Charming in a sense, where where a mother attributed with male physical characteristics comes to rescue her. But it's also to further the point within my argument that women also lead. Women also often cause their own demise, in which that if it is known later in the story that the heroine uses the keys that were given to her to open a secret room of the Marquis, which then leads to him wanting to kill her. And the fact that this contrasts the conventional archetype of damsel in distress, in which in common fairy tales, for example, the damsel in distress is always the one under the influence of her oppressor, in which she has no control over her future. But here, in lines 15, keys, keys, keys. Keys are something used to open something that is locked, and in the sense of the story's plot, these keys are used to open the door, which leads to her basically causing her own potential demise that was then eventually which was then eventually avoided because of her mother. But also these keys are kind of Marquis's way of telling her that that he has given her the keys to let go of her previous of her innocence. And these keys, this something that's locked is the talent for corruption, which eventually happens in the story, in which in a archetype and in a conventional fairy tale, there's and in Bluebeard, the female protagonist lives happily ever after with a Prince Charming. But in this case, the heroine, the story states that they lived after, not happily. And I think this is important because it shows that this transformation from an innocent figure to one that recognizes the perhaps advantages in conforming to women objectivity lives with the within the mental state of the heroine. And I think this is the most evidently evidenced in lines 31 to 32, in which, what is that key I demanded for a chafing that made me bold? The key to your heart, give it to me. This is seemingly like a final transformation of the heroine's progression to someone who is corrupted in a sense, in which she takes a step over the precipice mentioned in the beginning of this extract and accepts her fate as a objectified woman. And she and for chafing, that means kind of messing around in a sense, and they have becoming in a sense of like very, very messed up lovers, in which she accepts the total control and of the Marquis. And in conclusion, I believe this emphasizes Andrew Carter's perhaps commentary on society's one-sided perspective on women objectification, in which the narrative point of the view, in which the point of the view of the heroine enables the reader to understand the text, that she has progressed from a position of innocence to a position of corruption.
Okay. At this point in time, I'd ask you a question. I'll probably ask you something on the lines of that corruption business, and that one-sided objectification. Still don't know what that means. But not too terribly concerned. The rest of it is fine. I get what you're saying. Men aren't objectified, and just females are objectified?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you talk about one side, it's like just men are making females do this, or females also make females do. You know what I'm saying? Because you talk later about this self-corruption, but you used would you use demise, responsible for demise, or something like that?
Right. Yeah.
Super big. Women cause their own. I probably wouldn't ask you this later on because it's a tough question. You brought it up. You talk about the first person narrative makes this have a level of reality.
Mm-hmm.
I might immediately ask you about that. Can you answer that like in 10 seconds? I think you can.
Can I think about it?
Yeah, you've got 8 seconds.
Okay.
7 seconds.
It's reality.
Either you can answer it real quick or you can't, because it's a very bold statement. And I wouldn't give it to you because it's pretty nasty. But I like, because I think first person perspective is huge on this.
Well, I think there's you can kind of categorize reality into two kinds of reality. One is like kind of the societal reality, in which we accept the reality that is given to us, in which in this case, in specific to this case, where women are objectified and they dislike that objectification.
Cool. Do you understand at this point in time, it's like a literary device question and not like a cultural context question? It is first person perspective.
Right. And
I'm fine with that. It's all smart and makes sense. But
and by providing a first person perspective in this story, she's able to give readers a glimpse of what actually goes on in the mind of a woman being objectified by a man, and that in fact there is no, or there, like, it's not all dislike, and that women actually recognize the ability and the advantages of being objectified.
Cool. I'll take that. Not bad. Hoping you get at that whole dual thing.
Yeah.
It's there. Some of this language has to be from the story incident stuff. The other part is that reflective. You did say reminiscent,
Yeah.
which is good. Cool. So it's candid.
Yeah.
Or is it? It is. I mean, she's not making herself sound too innocent
Right.
at certain levels. She's sharing stuff which might not make her sound like the most intelligent, or there's definitive levels of culpability.
Right.
Anytime you tell a story where you are the victim, and it's kind of like, it's one thing to say, okay, they came out of nowhere and we were robbed.
Right.
Oh, that's horrible. Or the story of me being cheated out of some money. It's like, ooh, how honest am I going to be about, I got this email from this Nigerian prince. I felt so bad. Are you going to really be like, how do you tell that story without do you make yourself sound like a complete idiot? I mean, it is kind of your fault.
Yeah.
All right, good. This is strong. I wrote some stuff on here. You will look at it all. One thing, because all that's completely accurate. Found at times, and I do the same thing, because I like to, focus on things, for clarity of what I'm saying. But you need to go back to those lines more.
Yeah.
That's it. It's a balance thing. 10 points for those rhetoric devices. All that stuff you're saying is going to be accurate and strong. But if I see you looking up here, I'm okay with that. But I need to go back to the sheet. And then you're like, okay, because line 7 is this, and that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's when you're finishing. You were off on this bit over here, which is your. I know this is some preconceived stuff you had in your head.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that stuff at times I was questioning whether or not it was 100% supporting your thesis. I think in the end it kind of did. You ended up bringing these other concepts.
Right.
Why aren't those concepts they kind of work with your thesis? You did make them work in the end, but I felt they were stronger than the objectification. I think this is more it's your fault versus objectification.
In a sense, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Because it's like it really is putting your hand in the bear trap.
Yeah.
It's her fault. Why did she not notice? This guy isn't doing a whole lot except for he's not super charming. He's got a lot of money. And so it's like she's trying to make herself think it's going to be okay, or there's some elements there, which is not her fault. She's a child, so we have to be okay about that. So yeah, he's objectifying her, but it's also like, do lions objectify gazelles? You know what I'm saying? It's not like he had any other alternative.
Right.
It's not like, yeah, my bad, I know I'm wrong. I'm treating you like a woman, he has a plan, and it's not really in control because he has some sort of sadist, sociopathic, psychotic tendencies. Good. And the point is, it's not like you're wrong with objectification. It certainly is there, and you should have mentioned more. Go the objectification route. The conversation, she's okay with being called a baby. She gets all the keys, but the one that matters. And there's some symbolism there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'll let you do all of this stuff in the house. You're not charging the money kind of thing. Like, that's kind of what this would be in a modern domestic scenario. She gets, I get to take care of this. Yeah. I get to clean the bathrooms. Stuff that he doesn't really care about. But the whole time he's manipulating her. That's the objectification. Completely is making her do what he wants her to do by this passive aggressive thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's still going to go to that bloody chamber. She knows it's not a good idea, but she has nothing else to do. He's completely pulled the strings.
Right.
Don't let her feed herself. Don't let her have anything to do. Make her bored as hell. And when I give her, which is essentially like, you got nothing to do. You have no TV. You live in a hut. I just gave you Xbox, and a 6-foot, 3D television. There's no way you're not going to want to play with that thing.
Yeah.
So completely sets her up. So they're Objectification, manipulation, her playing some extremely subservient roles and not being given any sort of say in this scenario, that would support objectification. But on his level, it's not that conscious. All right, it's strong. I know you want to score. It's definitely, yeah, I'll get it because I know how you are. I'm going to be upset and I'll get a score now. I'm okay with some kind of A, because I don't know if you have the number in terms of IB numbers. I don't have that.
Okay. Cool.
I'd say 6 on a year 2 level. I think it's probably above 6 in year 2 level.
Okay.
Maybe a little higher. I gotta look at it.
Okay.
Okay, man.
Cool.
Hold on to that. I'll send you a link sometime tomorrow. I want you to read that, make sure everything you have here. This is a bit frightening. I put on here, and that the only issue I have is that it wouldn't be that high potentially because of the layer.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And I could be wrong. POV characterization.
I didn't do a lot of.
A lot of soul searching, philosophical. I think you did really well on the first criterion, and the problem is it's tip your cap. It's 10-10.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the one to tell artistry probably isn't going to give talent?
I'll do it.
You can give it, but we're not going to get the feedback. You can. We got start now and finish in 14 minutes and 22 seconds. You get 0 feedback today. Good. It's fine. We can go back and talk about it together. I think that's fair. It's going to end up giving you more time, which means I have to watch it again and the feedback's more accurate. So whenever you're ready,
Okay.
go ahead.
Hello, my name is Alana Rhetoric, and my candidate number is 001853. This excerpt is from The Bloody Chamber, published in Angela Carter's larger collective work, The Bloody Chamber and Other Stories, which was published in 1979. Angela Carter was a postmodern feminist who wrote with more radical, and she's stated as such because she had more radical ideas than most feminists, which was seen in her short stories. Angela Carter wrote stories based on fairy tale stereotypes and brought out the latent sexuality in these fairy tales. She wrote these stories to express her ideals through ridiculing perceived fairy tale ideals. This excerpt is from the middle of The Bloody Chamber and is important because it signifies the first instance of metamorphosis for the female protagonist. So in this excerpt, Angela Carter uses symbolism, foreshadowing, and allusion to show the relationship between Marquis and his bride, the female protagonist, in order to comment on the idea that women have limited choices in their lives. I would like to begin in the line 1 with the narrator discussing the idea of the opal, a shower of sparks, and the opal on her finger. The opal is symbolic of something that is pure, but is not completely transparent. Much like sparks, much like the opal, the female protagonist in this short story begins pure, but is seen to be corrupted. This is seen in line 2 as it states, the opal on my finger spurted green flame. This color green symbolizes lust, and in this case symbolizes the lust that Marquis has for this female protagonist, and is evidence that he holds, of the lust not only being for her physical presence, but also the lust of having the ability to corrupt her in the story. In line 2, it also states that the narrator feels as if she were on the edge of a precipice. This is symbolic of her position at the time of the story, as she feels she is in a dangerous position with very few choices that she can make. And the interesting thing about this is that Angela Carter, in her short story, she expresses the idea that not only does the villain in the story, or Marquis in this case, put her in this situation, but she herself has put herself on the edge of the precipice by making the decision to marry Marquis. Furthermore, in line 5, the narrator discusses the idea that even when I thought myself most in love with him, he always subtly oppressed me. So even though she thought herself in love with him, this is evidence that the female protagonist did not, in fact, ever love Marquis, and that this explicitly states that she knows that he has been subtly oppressing her from the beginning up until this point, and this expresses the theme of power and objectification. Furthermore, in lines 6 and 7, she states that I was not afraid of him, but of myself. This is realization that she was and has been corrupted by Marquis, but despite this, still stays with him because that is the only choice she can make. In line 7, it further, the narrator goes on to say that I seemed reborn in his unreflective eyes, reborn in unfamiliar shapes. This is evidence of transformation, but in this line is the transformation of her in Marquis' eyes and not in her own. In lines 9 and 10, Angela Carter further uses symbolism with the color of a blush, which is red, and this chromatic symbolism is evidence of something that is the same. Red is the same color of blood, and this is seen later on in the story, most notably in the bloody chamber itself, which has evidence of foreshadowing in the 3rd paragraph of this excerpt. In lines 10 and 11, the female protagonist says that to think that he may have chosen me because in my innocence he sensed a rare talent for corruption. This idea of being chosen by Marquis shows that Marquis has held all the power in this relationship and still does, and she realizes that he has chosen her for the simple fact that she is still innocent and can be corrupted by him. Moving on to line 14, where it's written, and a key to a locked barren room. This is foreshadowing of the bloody chamber itself, as it is seen later on to be a locked barred room, which she opens with a key that he gives her. And in line 15, it's stated where 5 generations of plate were kept. Although at the time of this excerpt, it is not known that the bloody chamber has the tortured remains of women, but this is the first hint of the idea that Marquis and his ancestors have been collecting items for generations, and this is later seen to be the remains of women, and the plate is symbolic of this. The idea that 5 generations of plate were kept in a locked barred room. And moving on to the 3rd paragraph, it starts in line 17. It starts with a single word repeated 3 times, keys, keys, keys. A key is a symbol for something that can unlock something that was previously hidden. And in this serves a dual purpose in this story and in this excerpt, because the key that he entrusts her with, the one that he tells her not to open, leads to her not only discovering his true self, but also understanding her own reality. Line 18 states, although he entrusts line 18, she uses the word baby. This is evidence of pedophilia, the idea of pedophilia, and the idea that she is very young and he is an old man. And this also shows that he has a certain power over her because of his old age. In line 21, there is the first evidence of allusion with Empress Josephine. This is allusion to an empress during the French Revolution who was imprisoned and only released when her first husband died. Much like Empress Josephine, the female protagonist in this novel is imprisoned in Marquis' castle and is seen to only be freed when Marquis is killed by her mother at the end of the story. Because of this imprisonment, this evidence imprisonment,
this further expresses the idea that the female protagonists and women as a whole have limited choices in their lives. Moving on to the fourth paragraph, in line 27, it stated that it was nearly time for him to leave me. This is discussing the idea that Marquis had to leave on an important business trip, and this is further evidence of his power over her because Marquis is leaving her on the night of their marriage. And furthermore, and finally, in lines 28 to 29, it stated one single key remained unaccounted for on the ring, and he hesitated over it. This key is seen to be the key that leads to the Bloody Chamber later on in the story. And the unlocking of the Bloody Chamber itself is allusion to Eve biting the apple in the Garden of Eden, the story of Bluebird, which is a folktale that the Bloody Chamber is loosely based on, and the opening of Pandora's box. In all three of these cases, as well as the Bloody Chamber itself, a woman is seen to open something out of curiosity and have to face consequences because of this. But the key difference between those three stories and the Bloody Chamber is that the female protagonist in this novel, in this short story, opens the Bloody Chamber because she's not only curious, but because she believes that this is her only choice in discovering what Marquis truly is. It is important to, and finally in the final paragraph, in lines 32 and 33, there's evidence of the female protagonist, beginning of the female protagonist metamorphosis, as the key words, she says, the narrator says that I demanded, for his chafing had made me bold. This is evidence that she is taking a step, and although in most fairy tales, the perceived idea that a damsel in distress must be saved by a hero, in this case, she is taking the first step in freeing herself through this key that will liberate her from Marquis' control.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Got a question. She's been corrupted by the Marquis.
Mm-hmm. How? She's been corrupted because the first evidence of corruption is the loss of her virginity, which occurred earlier on in the story. But this is the first realization that this corruption goes further than just the loss of her, that physical loss, but also a transformative loss of her mind, the way she views him and the way she views herself.
Keep going with that. How does that change?
So at the beginning, she believes that she has this idea that she is smitten with him. That he is smitten with him. And this is why. And this is why he has married her. But she later on realizes that her lust for her goes beyond beyond her physical self, and more with the idea that she is someone that is innocent, and she realizes that the sole reason he has chosen her is because of her innocence, and that the idea that he wants to corrupt this innocence. Yeah.
All right. I'll talk about it real quick for 2 minutes. The cool thing is we're going to do something different with you.
Okay.
You'll come back in. We'll put it on the screen. We'll do like a play-by-play.
Okay.
Pause it. We'll talk about it. You get a lot more time. You get more out of it. So, what would have been unfair is becoming extremely unfair for everybody else. Yeah, I'm okay with a lot of this. Go back to that thesis again.
In this excerpt, Angela Carter uses.
No, sorry. The last bit.
In order to comment on the idea that women have limited choices in their lives. Because in many of these...
It's tough to get the thesis on here with that. Simply because...
I mean...
It's certainly there. I have no issues with that if that's what you're going to go with. A lot of stuff you brought up was super relevant and spot on. And you can talk about all of it. But my issue is, well, I don't know if that's really has anything to do with choices. Or you brought stuff up and it's like, ooh, that's when you could so mention like choices, but you
I didn't.
And so it's like, if it's going to be a thesis,
More connections.
I mean, it's an argument, you know.
Okay.
It's like, well, you can still completely show you understand this extract, this criterion A, but it makes it much more cohesive of an argument if you can really get at what this passage is saying. If your thesis is about limited options, oof, she did choose the guy, you know.
I was thinking mostly like from the second line, like the edge of a precipice, like because of the decision she made to choose Marquis and to marry him. Now she has
Now
these
she's
limited
in there.
choices. Yeah, and now she's
See, that's the thing. Thank you. I saw that and I was like, ooh, and then something distracted me. I was like, wait, there's something there, and I put 4 asterisks. That was it.
That kind of undermined your argument.
okay.
Like, women in life have few options,
But
when
like,
they do have options and take bad options, now they really have few
two
options.
options, okay,
So
because it's kind of a rolling. Yeah, okay.
that's what's so interesting about the story.
It wasn't like she was completely destitute. You know?
Mhm.
We've seen that in a million different works of literature. It's like you have no options in life. Here comes this guy. It's not going to be good, but it beats being on the street
Sure,
and
yeah.
being poor.